Hello, welcome to Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour, where we're going to have conversations with middle-aged black men about what's going on. We welcome you to listen, comment, like, and hopefully encourage others to join for future conversations as well. We like to start off with a toast. And we feel that the most appropriate toast at this inaugural meeting would be an old-fashioned. Why an old-fashioned? Because it is raw and refined.
Today, two of the three amigos are here. It's John and Rich. Greg will join us next time. So today we're talking about ways to deal with and mitigate stress in our lives. Welcome to the inaugural podcast. From time to time, we'll have all three. Other times, it'll be two of us. We'll sometime have guests on with us as well. John will tell you about himself, and Rich, I'll tell you about myself. We've known each other for the majority of our lives. John's a doctor, and I'm a university dean. And we're here to talk about a lot of different things, in this podcast. But for today, we're talking about ways to deal with and mitigate stress in our lives. Quick overview of this episode. John's going to introduce himself in a moment, and then we're going to talk a little bit about personal stress triggers and some insights on dealing with that. We'll talk about coping strategies. We'll kind of talk about some lessons we've learned over our lifetimes for dealing with stress, and then we'll close it out. So John, what do you want to share with the people about you in the way of an introduction?
Well, I appreciate it, Rich, man. It's so good that we're doing something like this. I think the aspect of just understanding how important it is for men to be able to talk and just talk about what's going on is so vitally important, which is, us three, we've always had that ability to do so, which I think has helped us, at least even get to where we are right now with managing day-to-day life events as well. It's something that I'm excited about us getting done and being able to share with the public. I am an internal medicine physician, do a lot of different things as it relates to that. Also involved with health equity as well. So I'm sure some of what we talk today will have some of that influence in there as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's jump on in. Our first topic in here, personal stress triggers. John, what are some of your personal stress triggers? I'll go second.
Okay. It can always depend on the day. If I think about it like that. If most of my week is spent at work, then it's a matter of not having things feel like they're flowing as well as we'd like for them to. And then feeling the pressure of what that looks like. So, being a physician and working in a clinic, you're always kind of on a time crunch. You're kind of trying to figure out how to make sure you're giving people the time that they need when they're seeing you, but also making sure that you're being aware of the other people that are waiting to see you as well. And then you have your team members that are there that are asking questions and looking for responses as it relates to that as well. But most of that right now is probably around more of the work stressors. As far as just personal wellness, I'd say not feeling like I've got enough time to just do some of the things that I'd like to do as well. So we'll talk a little bit more probably about how we can kind of delve into that a little bit more, but for right now, I'm thinking those are kind of my major stressors, right?
Yeah, I think that it's very similar. I think that's quite common, as working professionals, that a big chunk of our personal stresses are going to be work related. Just naturally, we spend so much of our waking time at work or
Mhm.
doing work related stuff. So, For me, deadline, what I do is as a dean, a big chunk of my responsibility is curriculum related. Another chunk of it is faculty performance and things like that. So I don't have anything life or death going on in my space, but every job, every company, every organization feels as though everything that they need to get done is somewhat life or death,
Right.
right? So, there's, I guess, those work related stresses. So perfect example in 2024, we run into the crunch of accreditation visits. And so, the timelines are getting compressed, all the requests for information, things of that nature can kind of pile up, that's examples of how that stress can happen. And then, there's always interpersonal relationship stuff, right? Even in the best relationships, things pop up that can add stress. But I think the biggest thing for me probably is work related stressors and maintaining and doing everything in those buckets within those time frames and things like that. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to figure out the work life balance, right? That challenge. How do we effectively get what we need to do for work done, but not let it consume our entire life? I can remember on many occasions I've been with my employer, the parent company, since 15, 16 years, something like that. And, a lot of new people come along over time, and I always would say to them that, it's important that you not let this place consume you because it will if you allow it. It's very easy to let the job become your whole life or a bigger chunk of your life than it should. So the challenge in managing that balance that, I'd say probably the best thing is if you can pick an employer that if you have to work for someone and aren't blessed to work for yourself, finding an employer who actually values work-life balance is huge because if the employer doesn't, then it's wholly up to you. There's nothing that's being built into the structure to accommodate that. If go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, you brought up really two good points that I don't want us to leave on yet. And one is the work-life balance aspect of things is and then the second, the interpersonal stressors as well.
Hmm.
Given us, and the public may not be aware, but we're middle-aged men, we're in our
Hmm.
50s. So we're in a generation now that we're having to not only try to take care of our families, ourselves, but also our parents. So this is
Yeah.
something that impacts a lot of what we have going on as it relates to stressors that there's no there's no great history or anything there that can help guide us as to what that looks like. So we're trying to navigate that, and that puts a big wrinkle in things as it relates to how do we manage those stressors, because we love our families, we love our parents, we want to be able to provide and help them along the way, but they have issues going on trying to navigate this world. They may have memory issues that are going on. They may have illnesses that prevent them from being able to be fully independent. And then for some, they may still have kids that are growing up and what that looks like, as well as just maintaining your own sanity through it all as well. And then when the work-life balance comes up, I know you may see it as well, Rick. I see it when I see folks that are coming in new to the practice of medicine, or even new to what it means to be in a clinic. Their conception of what work-life balance is a lot different than I say probably what you and our conception of work-life balance is. I think they're
Yeah.
more on life than the work, and I appreciate that,
Hmm.
but not understanding that you have to have the work in order to provide for some of the life that you want as well.
Yeah, it's tough. I can remember when we were a lot younger, when I was still practicing law, having a buddy who was making a lot of money, but was totally neglecting his health in pursuit of all the scratch he could make. And I just remember saying to him, your family is really going to enjoy all that money you make for them,
Right.
after you're gone.
Right.
Do you want to have an opportunity to enjoy any of this, or is it just, are you cool with, working yourself into the ground? And if you are, then cool, but it just seems to me that you could figure out a way to, be able to hang around and enjoy some of this, what you're creating.
I agree, man. It took me turning 50 to truly understand that I work in order to be able to enjoy life, but I want to be able to enjoy life before something happens to where whatever I'm making is going towards that. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I tell my folks who are getting close to retirement that, hey, let's try to do what we can, at least make sure that you can enjoy what you've been doing all these years. You know what I'm saying? Trying
Hmm.
to give it a perception that, hey, it ain't all about just us working right now either. So we get that work-life balance. We understand aspects of it, but hey, when you get to that point when you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy, I want you to be well, healthy, and in a place where you can enjoy all of that as well, and not
Yeah.
using all that you've earned to pay for the medicines and doctor visits, and legal fees and whatever else that's looking like as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of this, meme I seen on Facebook at some point along the way, or one of those platforms where it's this couple, they're riding on a river or something like over in Italy. They're senior citizens and they're both just laid out, knocked out.
Knocked out.
You know,
Yep.
they're trying to kick it, but they don't have any gas left in the tank to
Right.
do any of that. And so that's to your point. Talk a little bit about financial stress or time management struggles and how that can impact as the stress triggers
Oh
the
yeah.
financial stress or time management.
Yeah, so speaking on both of those, man, time management, financial matters can sometimes intertwine as well. But, time management comes down to how do we, where do we place our effort given the time that we have? So, we have 24 hours within a day, but you have to rest, you have to eat, you have to be able to relax your mind during that time. And for those that say, oh, I'll rest when I'm dead, well, you may be dead a lot sooner than you expect it to be, and not really again going back to being able to enjoy all that you had work towards as well too. So you got to learn understand time management, man. Like, someone like myself, yourself as well, involved with other activities, take up time. Family takes up time. Work takes up time. Meetings take up time. So it's again prioritizing what that looks like and what's important for you and for you to be able to get done what you want to try to accomplish. When it comes to financial stressors, I think, it's a matter of what we want. I mean, there are aspects of what we need when it comes to finances, and that's food and shelter. But then it comes down to what is it that we want type deal, and that's to be able to travel. For some it's the clothes, for some it's the jewelry, for some it's the, being able to have a certain persona with their life, their cars, their house, their things of that nature. So some of that we put onto ourselves, which can be okay. But now you have to understand how am I going to navigate through those financial stressors so that I can still maintain my health and wellness in order to enjoy all of those, that I'm trying to achieve as well.
I think one of the things that's helped me a great deal is actively using the calendar. Just of something that's just simple tech kind of thing, but it makes a big difference. And so, I've got obviously we got 15 different calendars. I've got in my current role, I run the programs for three different universities that's part of our system. So I've literally got three calendars for work. It's all merged into Outlook. So the view that I have appears just one calendar, but there's three calendars embedded in that. And then I have my personal calendar, which is, which also has layers because it's one with me, it's one with my wife and I, and then there's a third one that's all full family. That's my wife and my mother and I. So on my phone, then that means there's like six calendars all working together. But I can see it all, and so it allows me to keep a good handle on what I got going on every day, every weekend, 2 months from now, 4 months from now. And I think that helps. I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm comfortable saying no to people. No, you can't have that time. That time is for me, or no, this time I'm doing this or that, or nope, I'm just not doing anything at this time.
Yeah.
So I've gotten to a point where I'm comfortable enough. And then, one of the most basic things I've done, and I've done this for decades now, but every day on my calendar, lunch is blocked out. I block out
Uh-huh.
time for lunch, and it's on the public facing calendar. So anybody that tries to schedule something on my calendar, any invite you try and send me, you're gonna see that that time is blocked out. So if you
Mhm.
want to schedule something during that time, that's fine. But I'm gonna be eating during that meeting. You know,
Right. And that's
or if
important, bruh.
Yeah, so or if we're in the same place, we're gonna be eating during that
Right.
meeting, or you're gonna be sitting there watching me eat. But you know, it's
Right.
just that taking control of my time and making sure that I'm the one deciding as much as possible about how my time is divvied up,
Yeah.
I think is important. So let's talk. We're
I
gonna
I think
go
also
ahead.
real quick about with the
Hmm.
calendars, bro. I'm like you on that. I've got my work, Outlook calendar, and I've got my personal calendar as well. What would encourage us to do though, try to have our calendar as a guide to what is going on, preparedness, being prepared for what it looks like in the future days, but be careful about how overloaded that calendar can get as well. You can look at that calendar and see that you got every slot already booked up, except like you said, your lunchtime in there. Well, okay, well, did you also put in time for you in there? You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Did you put in your time for just a moment for yourself? Did you put a time in there for say, okay, I got my lunch, but what about my exercise? What about giving a call to my significant other to say, hey, how you doing? Or whatever like that, because that whole day can be blocked up with all these other excess activities. And let's be real, at the end of the day, some of that is, yes, is important, but is it really as important as just other things that are going on in our lives as well?
Hmm. Yeah, good point. And so, yeah, I should when I talk about the calendar being filled in, that includes everything. Even like, for example, this today,
Mhm.
this time is on the calendar, and that's not so much just for me. That's also for my wife, so she knows what I've got going on. That's on part of our shared calendar. But yeah, so she knows what I've got going on that day as well, so we can plan things together effectively. And like for me. I think some things you depends on the level of priority that you give them. So like for me, the like you were talking about the exercise.
Yeah.
That's built in. For me, that's built in all the time. And it's built into my workday as well. So I'm literally hosting meetings. We're doing one-on-one calls with some of my people while I'm on the elliptical or,
Okay.
things like that. So we're making sure that I've got the time to get in that exercise, but like you said, it's not just that you're using the calendar, it's about the priorities that you give to different things that you're putting on that calendar. And so it's those things that you're doing that are going to enrich you. Are they going on the calendar? Are those things that are going to support your health and your wellness? Are they going on that calendar too? So that everything that matters, not just work, you know. Yeah. So
Is
it's got to be.
I appreciate that. So this is us getting into some of, what we're talking about as far as coping strategies there. And
Hmm.
my brother, I'm gonna put a word of caution in there to you. I heard what you said about exercise and having maybe a meeting or something on while you exercise. And now I am one that I try to encourage folks. Hey, do not blend the two. Okay, exercise is for you. Once you start to bring in outside factors into the exercise, then it's no longer giving you the true benefit that you're trying to get from exercise. So you're trying to get your heart rate and things of that going. Well, you can do that walking around or whatever. You can do that jumping up and down, whatever. But it's also a mental aspect to exercise that you need from that as well. And if you've got your mind going on work related things while you are exercising, what I tell folks, no, you're just still working, my friend. You're just still being active while you're working. That's not the
Hmm.
kind of exercise I'm encouraging you to do because I need us to have that mental space to where it is not associated with these other things in order to relax and rest your mind and body while doing so.
I
But I
hear you.
love exercise. But yes.
I don't try and relax my mind when I'm exercising though. That's what I use the meditation for.
Good.
That's what I use the
Meditation's
medit
great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I use the meditation for. But and
Okay.
that's not something that happens often. But if I've got
Okay.
a meeting, I do one-on-one phone calls with some of my program chairs. And so
Gotcha.
that's just to catch up, a touch base. What's going on? Is there anything that you need? And say for instance, one of mine, it's at 9 a.m. And I'm at the gym and it's 8:45. I got a choice. I can shut it down or I can keep going a little longer and then we can chat while I'm finishing
Yeah,
up on the elliptical. So it's something like that, but it happens on occasion. But it's not, when I say that, it's not on my schedule to work out while I'm having meetings.
that's
But
good.
or
That's
or
good.
I might get because we're pretty much an on-call all the time kind of world. I might be working out and I might get a text from one of my people that says, "Hey, you got a minute? I got a quick question." Sure, give me a call. And then we'll wrap that and then I'll go back. But yeah, I get your point. But yeah, I use the calming of the mind. Doesn't happen when I'm working out because for one, I'm bumping my playlist. I have a
Okay.
cardio playlist that I'm bumping that does not allow for calm. Now,
Okay.
when I'm walking, I have a very different playlist that's Alice Coltrane, and it's just a
Uh-huh.
couple of songs, Love Supreme, a couple other ones. So it puts you in that totally different mind state.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
That's that you put in some meditation time. So, and that's it.
Hmm.
It's a matter of being able to find those balances. So if you're still
Hmm.
getting those moments in, then I think that's still fine. It's just a matter of just knowing that, I have folks who are laborers and they're like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm moving, I'm doing all kind of stuff at work all day. I'm like, yeah, but you're
Hmm.
not giving your mind a break through any of that too.
Right,
So that's
right.
that's where that's important. So as long as you're getting that aspect of it in, then I definitely feel like you're helping to reduce those stressors. But
Yeah.
also, bro, I'm gonna say make sure that when you're doing things outside of work, that you're finding time to do those things that you enjoy, as well. Some people think they got to go to the gym. Some people think they got to join this class. They got to do that in order to get their activity or whatever in. I say, no. I mean, being active doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in a place to do that. You can do that in your home. You can go walking. You can go to the park. You can dance, swim, laugh, cycle, whatever that's looking like. Those are the
Hmm.
activities that you want to do because that's what helps to release that stress that you're under. If you're stressed about, ooh, I got to get to this class, or ooh, I got to catch up with what this person doing in order to be able to show that I'm doing, then you're not really reducing any stress. You just added a whole other level
Yeah,
of
you just
stress right there.
you've increased your stress because now you somehow turned it into a competition or something artificial. I
Right.
think the most important thing you said right there is to have the activity in a place where you're having the fun with it too. So like one of the things that we started doing recently, well, not recently, we've been doing it for a little while, but we turned it up a little bit recently. My wife and I like to bowl. We're not great bowlers, but we enjoy it. And it's a good exercise. And so last fall, I want to say, we went out and we bought bowling shoes just
Hmm.
because, it's like we wanted to go a little more often. And, I hate using those rented shoes. So we went and got some, they weren't real expensive, but we
Right.
went to, the pro shop at the bowling alley and got us some shoes. And then right around Christmas, I said, I had been doing some research and looking into it. And so we went and we got bowling balls. Went and got our own
Hmm.
balls and got them, drilled. Totally different experience having your own bowling ball because
Yeah.
for one, is fitted to your hand. So, it just feels completely different. Friday, we were going to go to the gym. But instead, we said, hey, let's go bowling. And then we went and bowled for a few hours. And then we went to the gym on Saturday. Just finding ways to be active and to do fun stuff at the same time. I had my Apple Watch on, and had it turned on to bowling, so it would track. And I burned like 350 calories while I was bowling.
Uh,
So,
that's
if,
excellent. Yeah.
yeah, it would have been great if I hadn't eaten a whole bunch of chicken nuggets and fries, you
Right.
know.
Right. Right. Right.
So, so,
There you go. Right.
so I probably came out a net negative in terms of the calories consumed versus the calories burned. But
I
no,
hear
we
you.
had a good time, and in terms of doing things like that, doing fun things, and burning some calories while you're doing it, it's a great way to manage stress, to cope with stress, things of that. So, we've talked about exercise. Let's talk a little bit about sleep. As a doctor, I know you can really delve into, what happens when you're not getting enough sleep, when people routinely short themselves. I think as a society, as a culture, we've accepted this notion that people are supposed to work really hard to be successful. Sleep is a thing that often suffers.
I agree.
You got finite blocks of time for work. You can't really move that too much, right? If you've got to work 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, you got to do that. Then, depending on where you live, there's another reality of a commute, right?
Mhm.
People that live in, if you're not working from home, my day I was usually spending, before I became a remote worker, I was spending 3 hours a day in the commute, easily 90
Mhm.
minutes in each direction. So if you're talking 9 hours for work, another 3 hours
Mhm.
in the commute, that's 12 hours right there, right? So you got 12 hours left. So then, you're cutting. Now, if you're talking about some quality time with your
Right.
family, that's a couple hours, right? There was time before you started that commute at the beginning of the day, right? You got up. You don't sprint out the door, 5 minutes after you wake up, on most days. So, you're talking about at most 8 hours. But for most people, they're not getting 8 hours of sleep. They're getting somewhere 4 to 6 in there.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
no, great
detrimental,
point.
you
It
know?
definitely is. In the long run, it definitely affects our bodies, and our spirit as well. So some other things to do, to try to help get yourself ready for that kind of restfulness, we'll say. One of the things we do, my wife and I, we travel. And we dedicate time just to be able to spend together. My wife works out of town throughout the week, but is pretty much home on the weekends unless we're traveling for some other event or anything. So we just make sure that we make that time as time that we spend together. And you need that relaxation component, especially after busy lifestyles, busy work days and things of that nature. Your exercising helps your body to be able to relax actually as well, but it's a matter of what we're doing throughout the day too. So sometimes, late night activities or late evening activities of exercise may not have to be the cycling or the sprint or the up and down, body work, whatever type deal, but it
Hmm.
might be the Tai Chi or yoga type activities that you can do
Right.
that helps the body still be active, but yet calms the body down as well. But
Mhm.
really, we should be striving for at least about 6 to 8 hours of sleep. But again, you mentioned it well, Rich. How does that day look? And if you're left with only a certain amount of time for you to try to get that rest, that doesn't necessarily mean also that you're going to be restfully resting, during that time as well. So we
Yeah.
talked about it earlier about making sure our calendars are what they are, but that's where we have to make sure you're putting in the time for you. And that's part of that time. It's like, I need my downtime. I need to turn off these devices that I have on that, like you said, we're basically 24 hours now on this. Before somebody knew not to call you after 10 o'clock. Well, now they can send you a text message or an email, but you hear the beep or you see the light come on. You're like, oh, shoot, what's that? Let me see what's going
Hmm.
on. So now you got the mind revved back up again. But it's a matter of trying to find those moments where you're going to say, look, we're shutting this down. TV's off. I've already done some things to help relax my mind beforehand, and then just trying to get to that sleep pattern. Now, of course, there can be
Yeah.
things going on. You might have that big project the next day. You might have that conversation you got to have with your professors and everything the next day that you may not want to have, but you got to have with them about some things that are going on. I might know that I've got some patients coming in the next day that I'm like, oh man, they are not where they're at, or I know we're going to have to talk about some things that just not going to be too comfortable with their health and things. So those things do play into that as well. But for the most part, yeah, we want to try to make sure that we're getting in at least a good 6 to 8 hours of restful sleep. And again, try to find where you're turning off those devices at least about 30 minutes to an hour before you're getting ready to kind of wind things down as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw another technological suggestion in there.
Mm.
I don't know if Android, I'm assuming Android has something similar to it. With Apple products, they have this thing called Focus.
Mm.
Focus, you can set different focus settings. I use a focus for work. It's a work focus only allows my phone will only ring for certain people. I can identify the people that I want my phone to ring for. If you're not in this
Mm.
group, if you call, it doesn't ring. If you send a
Mm.
text message, I don't get notifications. There's a driving focused, right? It's one, if you're driving, you'll get
Mhm.
text messages or you might get phone calls, or whatever. And then
Mhm.
there's a sleep focus I have set. So when the sleep focus, I've got got in my phone set what time my regular sleep time is, right? What time I'm going to bed, my alarm, what time it goes off in the morning. And so what happens is a couple of things. I've got, lights get dimmed in my house at a certain time automatically. They come on in the morning at a certain time automatically. But the best thing is that focus, only a select few people will my phone ring for after 10 o'clock.
Okay. That's
After 10
good.
o'clock is you, Greg, my wife, my mom, just a small handful of people. My phone won't ring for anybody else. It just goes the voicemail and it's silent. My watch, at once it hits the sleep focus, my watch, the screen dims, my phone dims, all of the tech automatically. I have it set to shut down about an hour
That's
before
good.
bedtime. So that, and then again, so, if an emergency comes through, yeah, if somebody could call, if you call me 4 or 5 times in a row, it'll make a, I have that setting on there. But for
Mhm.
most everything else, it automatically shuts it down. So again, it's just trying to take control of as much of that time as possible, managing as much of my time myself, so other people aren't pulling at it and tugging at it. Because I'll listen to that message in the morning and be like, hey, you're sorry, that message you left at 1 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
because you saw some funny something on. That was hilarious. Yeah, well, it was funny this morning. It was still funny, but
Right.
I didn't need to hear none of that shit last night. So
Right.
yeah, so so
And
you
folks
know,
got to be able to be okay with that too. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
So folks got to realize that look, just because you up at 2, 3, whatever in the morning, I mean everybody else is gonna be up at the same time, and it's
yeah,
okay. You know,
yeah.
as well. So yep.
So you've talked about family and friends, spending quality time. One thing we didn't really talk a whole lot about yet is hobbies or creative outlets as ways to do stress relief.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
real quick on that, it depends and that goes back to a little bit about what I was saying about what are your interests type deal. And that's how you
hmm
keep that interest going. So for me, I've always loved the martial arts, actually. Kung
hmm
Fu, Tai Chi are things that I've done over the past 20 years, and I love it. I realized that I have not given myself that space to be as involved with it as I had been. And that's on me. It's not on anything else because I'm the one that set that calendar, set those time frames and everything as well. But I recognize how I miss it as well. And
hmm
that's up to me to now decide how am I going to find that space to get it back in. It could
It's
be
that's life
listening,
happens and we drift.
right?
Life
And we
we
drift.
just we drift away from things and we can move into other places just because of the normal, movements of life when we don't maintain that priority list. Like you
Mhm.
said, it's slipped in priority, not intentionally, right? It wasn't like at some
Mhm.
point you said, you know what, I'm tired of kicking shit. You
Right.
was it just kind of eased down the list as other things creeped up
Right.
and kind of took a little more space. And so you got to kind of, you got to say, I still love kicking shit, damn it.
Right.
And squeeze it back
Right.
in. hmm
That's it exactly, bro. So I am and things. So those are good things. And then, it depends on what it is you love. I mean, I love to dance. So
hmm
whenever I can get out there to dance, I'm gonna be
hmm
somewhere dancing and that's because it's a relaxing space for me and I enjoy it. If you enjoy crocheting, if you enjoy playing cards, if you enjoy going for walks, all of those can be considered hobbies, as
hmm
well as other ways to relieve stress and things too. So I
Yeah.
encourage all of us to find that something. You know what I mean? If it's
Yeah.
reading, excellent, but we got to find that something in order to try to help. Just give us again a moment where your mind is not always focused on one thing as well.
Yeah. The pandemic really introduced me to walking. And when it's not cold, which so for half the year, because I'm in Chicago and so for half the year, I try to walk every day. My basic is on days that I work out, I walk about a mile. On days that I don't work out, I'll walk somewhere between 3 and 5 miles. There's a nice park not far from my home. It's a beautiful park, and I just walk it all the time. And then I've
Mhm.
walked it so much that in the cold weather, when I walk in the gym, I walk on the treadmill. But I've walked this park so much that I have a really good mental image of the entire park. And so one of the things that I do and this is I do to de-stress, is when I'm walking on the treadmill, I try to walk and maintain a mental image of that park as though I'm walking through it. The challenge is mentally slowing your mind down because you can walk through that whole park in like 5 seconds in your mind, right? You can just zip through it. Your
Mhm.
mind moves at that speed. But I'm trying to walk on the treadmill and I'm trying to move through the park in my mind at the same pace that I'm walking. So that
There you
and so
go.
that's a nice mental exercise. And so I'm focused just on the image of that park as I'm moving through it. Takes me
Yeah.
through it as if I'm walking, and it takes me away from everything else. So it's a really cool de-stressor. But that's 'cause, like I said, I've walked that park so many times over the last several years that I've got the entire park in my head, even where some of the rabbits jump out and say, "Hey." But it's a cool connection with Mother Nature for me, and it's a great way to keep my stress down.
Yep. That's excellent. That's you practicing mindfulness, my friend. So that's exactly
Hmm.
what that is. So that no matter
Hmm.
where it takes you, if it takes you to that park, if it takes you to that beach, if it takes you to that grove or whatever that is where you can find yourself truly at peace with where you are, then that's practicing mindfulness during those times. And that's important, man, especially when things feel heavy. Take a few minutes. It doesn't have to be 15, but take a few
Hmm.
minutes just to get you there, to help get you settled back down so that you can be that dynamic performer that you want to be through your work days and stuff as well. So yes.
Hmm. Well, I think we've touched on a lot of things here. We touched on some personal stress triggers. We looked at some coping strategies. I think we've both talked about some of the lessons we've learned along the way. I think one of the things I'd like to stress as we get ready to wrap up is that people don't have to make huge changes to get on a better path towards managing and their stress and things like that. Baby steps actually do help. Making small little changes, maybe just starting to use that calendar or being a little bit more selfish about some of your time, blocking off some time that's just for you or shutting down a little earlier each night. Just one little change can make a difference, and it might get you to a point where you'll start to notice, okay, I can really control this stuff. I can really manage more of this stuff myself instead of just letting life happen for me.
It's setting those small goals. Sometimes when we reach for those lofty goals, it's okay to have them and we need them, but we got to
Hmm.
understand there are steps to get to that goal as well. And if you
Right.
take those steps and you're achieving those goals, then that helps keep you motivated to get to the next level. And that goes for just wellness and stress relief as well as just losing weight or getting this exercise goal or this work goal, all of that, you're absolutely right, my brother. We got to just make sure you take the small steps in order to get to those areas. And
Well,
I
I
hope that
think
with our listeners too, Rick,
hmm
those that are listening, truly understanding and recognizing this is our first episode as well. But we want folks to hopefully get some great takeaways from this. And if they have some input, have some suggestions, want to share some things that they're doing as well to help with stress management, please do that. And, this won't be our last conversation as relates to this. It'll come up again, something else that we're talking about. So we would definitely like to utilize that information. And we hope that you share our podcast with others as well.
most definitely. You think stress will come back again? You will be talking about stress. Come on, man. We just solved it for the whole world
There you
right
go.
now.
That's
So
right. That's right.
everybody
That's
listen to the podcast and everybody's good. Now we'll move on to something else because we never gonna have to deal with stress again, right?
right.
Right.
All right. All right.
All
Oh, man. That is
right.
it.
Well, thank you all so much for spending time with us today. God bless y'all and good night.
Good night.